Well, spring is in the air and you join me on the banks of the epic Berners Hall Fishery in deepest, darkest Essex. My guest for this session is none other than Nash's very own Mr. Meticulous, wait till you see his rig wallet, Alfie Willingale. And in this session we're going to focus on pop-up fishing. Now obviously, as it's the drop, there's loads of different segments interspersed through the whole programme. There's some distance casting tips with Jermaine, there's a look at stick mixes and loads more, as well as some product stuff in there. Without further ado, there's a stock full of mega carp. Let's get fishing. The next time you see me, we'll be in the swims. Alfie.
Hello mate.
How are you, mate? Nice to see you.
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I am very good, mate. We've got a lovely venue, mega fish. It's spring. I couldn't be better, mate. It's busy though, isn't it?
It is. It's what we expected though. You know, Monday morning. Well, we knew how busy it was going to be because obviously you pre-book, and we were told it's all booked. So it's you got to deal with it. You know, you've got to, when there's fish like this, you have to face that sometimes and do what you can do.
What's going to be your plan of attack, mate? Obviously, there's a good stock of real good fish. It's got 50 in it, a good head of 40s, some 30s, and to be fair, the weekend just gone, there was a big social on, and there was a few fish caught sporadically in areas. What's your plan to attack it, mate?
Yeah, well, like you said, the guys at the weekend did really well, so fair play to them. Different weather now. This is sort of the longest sunny spell and like warmish temperatures we've had in a long time. High pressure. I'm not going to go heavy with a bait. I don't think. I think this is going to be single pop-up fishing towards showers. Yeah. You'll have one zig here, so I'll definitely be using that. I think to some capacity over the next few days, just because of the weather. But really, just because I think they might have put a bit of bait in at the weekend. Yeah. We're not seeing a great deal at the minute. Single pop-ups towards where the fish are showing. Hopefully the fish will tell me what to do.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm along the same lines, mate. I think there's going to have been some bait going over that weekend. And if we see anything, it's getting a pop-up on its head, and hopefully it results in a bite, mate. We'll build from there, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, that's a plan. Let's put it into practice.
I'm going to let you get set up, mate. I'm going to take my trip down there, get in my swim, get set up, and I'll catch up with you later, mate.
Yeah, nice one, mate.
See you in a bit.
See you in a bit. Okay, I've got the leading rod out, and I'm just having one or two casts just to know that I'm not about to cast single pop-ups into big beds of Canadian where I won't be presented. As it happens, I've had two casts to the sort of limits of my boundary and I'm pulling back and it's very clear, which I don't like so much because it means there's, you know, you can be presented in quite a large space of the swim. I like it when you find small holes in the weed. It gives you a better indication that that's carp that have created that, but there's a lot of clear space out there. So on the other hand, if I see them show, I can be confident that that single pop-up's going to be presented, which is a good thing, of course. So now I'm going to sit back a little bit and just see what everyone else is doing, see if I can spot the carp, because I don't want to go all my eggs in one basket now. I'm going to see some carp show basically, and then I know if I cast towards them that I'm going to be presented, and it could be game on for a bite.
Now, with regards to my swim, what I've done, having not really seen any activity at all, is I've just put a couple of marker leads out there just in various areas around the swim, just to have a little bit of an explore. And generally out there it's quite soft, it's not silty, it's sort of sandy, and there's little bits of weed, but there's not a great deal of variance apart from one spot that I found which is completely polished. It's absolutely granite gravel, and it's very different to a lot of the makeup of this lake bed. That's only created by feeding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target that area, or have target that area, with two single pop-ups to start with. Presentation wise, throughout the course of the session it will have to be my version of the hinge rig. Now I've got utmost confidence in this rig, I've used it for absolute years. If I'm opting for a slightly higher pop-up, which in this type of situation where the pressure's high, the fish are just waking up and they're ghosting around and they can see those bright hook baits and duck down in it. I'm not necessarily getting them honed in on spot feeding. I just want a reactionary take. That slightly higher pop-up when compared to something like a Ronnie Rig, I think stands out more and gives more of a contrast. There are a few different things with regards to how I use or how I employ my hinge rig. First of all, I do tie up 2 sets of booms. Now I've got some Fluoro Link booms, £20, and I've got some Skin Link semi-stiff booms. I tend to keep the length around 6 to 7 inches. And the reason I've got the difference in material is because when I'm fishing over a spot, let's say, for example, that gravel area, I think that the Fluoro Link comes into its own. I know the bottom's solid. I want that stiff presentation to reset itself, but also aid with regards to the hooking. And I also am very confident in exactly what that rig's going out over. The only time that I'll change from that Fluoro Link, and as I said before, onto the semi-stiff Skin Link, is if, for instance, I saw a fish show in a different area and I wasn't sure whether I was casting my hinge rig onto something slightly softer, maybe in some low-lying weed, and then I want the sort of buffer that that Skin Link gives me. It's a little softer, it can take to any contours, it's a little bit more forgiving when chucking at showing fish. I use £20 Fluoro Link. It's got a good balance between supple and stiff, and also with regards to that I use 2 Perfection loop knots. One at the swivel end where it attaches to my leg clip via a quick change system. The second is a Perfection loop knot down near the ring swivel. And the reason I use those loops is for that bit of movement that I want when the fish comes in. It's more reactionary, it's not too stiff, and it also ensures that I get good hooking potential with the rig itself. The hook section, I'm using a size 4 chod twister. Again, ultra strong pattern, reliable, big hook, barbless in this case to go with fishery rules, and I've not got any qualms about using that in barbless. Even with the weed present, it's a solid hook that's caught me loads of carp in the past. And on the back of that, I use a large rig ring. That again gives me lots of movement and that ability for that pop-up to stand proud and also be taken in by the carp and have a bit of separation with the hook so the hook holds are strong. The only other thing that I do, because I do like to use the old hook doctor to make sure that the points are ultra sharp, is I might just introduce either a stick if I'm fishing quite short range or PVA foam nuggets, just to ensure that when I get that rig out there on those spots that the hook point is protected and in absolute prime condition. Quite funny how things go in sort of fashionable circles in carp fishing. I'm going to talk to you about a little bait edge that I first used over 20 years ago. It is the stick mix. Now, fortunately at Nash, using stick mix is really easy. They come ready, in the case of this Copex Squid cultured stick mix, ready to go. What I can just do is simply pour it in my bait tub, use my chosen PVA system, plunge it in, and you've got a nice compact parcel of attraction. The reason that I use a stick mix is twofold. Firstly, nowadays with the fine points that we have on our hooks, it adds an element of protection to that hook point. So you know when you're casting out with that stick threaded through the hook length, which we'll look at later, that gives you a buffer to make sure you're not dinking your hook point and your hook is sitting there sharp and pretty, ready for a fish to come along and take it. Secondly, it adds a concentrated pile of attraction right round your hook bait for the fish to home in on. Obviously, as I've showed you there, it can be as simple as that, but what I like to do with regards to making my stick mix even more attractive is add a few elements. First of all, liquids. And for me, in conjunction with that stick mix, it has to be the Nash Copex Squid spod syrup. I add a little bit of that over a course of days before I get to my session. You basically want a really nice binding consistency, not an overly wet, damp mix. And I may, in terms of additives into the stick mix, add something like our micro pellet, the 2mm version here. I'll put that in as well. Make sure it's all mixed, nicely soaked in all that attraction from the liquids, and then it's ready to go when I get it out on the bank. In terms of the considerations when you're using it, if you're using something like maggots or something else with regards to within that bag, if you are going to thread it onto the hook point, you don't want anything in there that could mask that hook point. So perfect with micro pellets, perfect with the moist stick mix as it is. Now, in terms of the PVA that I use, we obviously do a number of different systems, a number of different types of mesh and sizes of mesh. For me, it has to be the super narrow ultra mesh PVA. It's really tight weave, it's obviously really narrow, so it's very compact, and if you're casting any distance, it doesn't impede it as much as a bigger mesh would potentially do. Obviously, you've got the option of using a bigger mesh if you wanted to, a wider mesh, But for me, I like it small and compact. In terms of that, I simply use the plunger system that's provided, scoop it in, and I ideally like a stick of around about 2 to 3 inches maximum. What I then do in terms of attaching it, there are a couple of ways that you can do it. Once you've got your nice compact stick, you can just nick it on either through the middle of the bag or through one of the knot ends, or the tag ends and the knot at the end of the bag. That's good to cast. Or, and my preferred method of attachment, is to pass a baiting needle through the actual stick itself, through the ends, avoiding the knots if possible, and then bringing my whole hook length through and putting the hook point into the actual stick itself. That is pure protection, 100% confidence when you cast it out there onto your spot. You're not going to ruin your hook point or your presentation. And it is a powerful little bundle of attraction all ready to go and hopefully get you that bite. There's my stick mix tips. Don't forget about it. Get back on it, use some sticks and get yourself some bites.
As I mentioned earlier, it's very busy. It's that changeover period from the weekend booking. There's leads going in absolutely everywhere, and the carp are going to be used to it, you know, but at the same time, they're going to end up where there's less lead activity, in my opinion. So I'm not going to thrash the water to a foam. And I'm going to sit here, I'm not going to rush, I'm going to prep my rig, and hopefully the carp are going to show in my swim and I can get a single hook bait into that area. Now, in terms of the rig, what exactly I use, I have a number of boom sections tied up in my rig wallet ready to go, Ronnie style that is, so it's 25-pound fluoro link booms, Ronnie swivel on the end, and then all I have to do is attach my hook section, which for me, I have previously been a big fan of the Ronnie claw. Having said that, I have actually transitioned through to straight point hooks now. I have a lot of confidence in using them from a number of different fishing sessions. I haven't had any problems with the twisters. And another thing to mention is it's a barbless venue here. That can, a lot of the time people go, oh, barbless, you know, like I'm going to lose them. I have no problems using barbless hooks. I was in a French water, Lac Serrière, barbless hooks, fishing through multiple weed beds, and I was still landing the carp when really I shouldn't have been because I wasn't in direct contact due to the number of issues with weed beds. Yeah, what I'm going to do now is tie up my Ronnie Rig. It'll be a size 4 barbless fang twister with a plastic bait screw, single 15mm squid, pink pop up, and then hopefully the carp are going to show me what to do next.
Alfie, spring pop-up fishing, mate. Talk to me about your thoughts on why springtime is synonymous with pop-up fishing.
Yeah, I think we have to look at the sort of theory behind it as spring and like bright singles casters showing fish. And the main reason behind it is these fish have had the winter period, they haven't been moving about a lot, they've been conserving their energy. Slowly that water temperature starts to heat up. Obviously they're cold-blooded animals, they love being in the warm and they start searching for food, but they're not going around filling themselves up generally they're not doing that anyway. So the fact if you're able to put high attract singles to some sort of sign of a carp, whether that's them jumping out, a bit of bubbling, anything like that, usually this time of year it's enough to nick a bite.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of reactionary, isn't it, I think. Their eyesight, they talk about it diminishing, and then there's sort of those bright, really contrast against them, and they sort of hone in on them. I've heard that whole theory side of first. For you talked about singles there, hook bait-wise. Obviously, pop-up-wise, our rigs are slightly different, but your hook bait choice, what colours do you go for generally as a starting point?
Yes, generally, like we said there, it's bright ones in the spring, and then as they've been hammered on them, because most people are listening to the advice we're sort of suggesting now, as other people would preach as well, they become a little bit wary and you go to match the hatch. But in the spring, colour-wise, it's a very personal preference. You know, you've got people who love their bright yellows, their pinks, their whites. You see, personally, I've never liked white, but I know loads of people who do. But for me, just through a period and a larger sample of the fish that I've caught, a nice pink coloured pop-up has done me really well.
It's a beautiful sort of afternoon. Let's get the kettle on, mate, and sit back and watch the water a bit.
100%, mate. This is the first time I've sat in a t-shirt in a long time, so I'm going to enjoy this.
Too right. Alf, what a lovely evening, mate.
I can't remember the last time it was this sunny. We had a lot of rain recently, so it is glorious, mate. That's yeah, a really nice view at the moment.
And the positive thing is, mate, it was relatively slow today. We ain't seen a lot, but in the last sort of hour, we've seen a couple pretty much in our vicinity, haven't we?
Yeah, like the original plan of maybe chucking a few singles at showers, thinking it's spring, a lot of sunshine today, didn't come off to begin with. But as we get into this sort of twilight period, as the sun's going down, we've seen a few. So now for me, it starts getting a bit more exciting. Things start getting a little bit more positive, and I'm looking forward to the night. Although it's going to be a bit cold, they're moving now. So
there's all to play for, mate. We're going to settle down, have some food, mate, get into bivvies, and hopefully await some action, mate.
Yeah, fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.
Well, it's last light and I've just seen one show off the back of my spot. What I'm going to do on that gravel spot that I've located is just put a little bit of bait out, 5 or so dot spots, and hopefully that will draw them as the light closes and as they're clearly moving onto that spot and produce a bite. There is no doubt that being able to cast at distance is not only a massive edge in your angling, but it's something that can set you apart from the rest of the competition on your lake. This time of year, springtime, even in the summer, you may see a show at distance. Being able to effectively get a bait there can result in a bite, whereas otherwise you may blank. Now today I'm at the Field of Dreams and I'm meeting up with our casting guru, Nash consultant Jermaine Hull. He can smash a lead ridiculous distances. I'm certainly nowhere near as a proficient caster as him, but I'm going to punish him, get loads of tips, have a little go myself, and hopefully over the course of this share some information with you which will help you improve your distance casting. Without further ado, I'm going to sit him down, have a chat, and then we're going to get out there and do some casting. Jermaine, pleasure to meet you, mate. How are you? Well,
buddy. I'm good, thank you. How are you doing?
Living the dream, mate. I'm looking forward to this. Distance casting, certainly not my strong point, but certainly is yours, mate. Before we start casting, I wanted to get a little bit of background with regards to you. First of all, the most important things. How far have you whacked a lead clocked?
Furthest on the tournament field is 257 metres, which is about 280 yards.
Jeez.
That's with a tournament setup, a fairly stiff rod, and a tournament grade line, which is 0.25 millimetres.
Right, give me carp rod my sense of where you can hit. So we're going to use a 12-foot X series, 3.5 pound test curve rod, 15 pound bullet.
Yep.
We're going to use a 50 pound shock leader. So
yep.
all Nash gear. We've got a 4 ounce lead.
4.5 ounce lead.
4.5 ounce lead. How far have you sent that setup before?
Around about 200 yards. On the field at the moment, we've got a bit of a crosswind, so I'm expecting to be about 185.
Right, that is a serious distance, mate. From a angler's point of view, for you, this aspect of casting, obviously it's become very specialised. You run tuitions. I'm guessing that you do quite a lot on the field like we're going to do now. How often are you practising? How often are you out there chucking at distance, but not in the pond, out on a field?
So at least 2-3 times a month for the last 2 years or so.
Okay, so not every week then, no?
Not every week, but majority. I spent a lot of time taking a step back from fishing and actually spending time on the field casting, just refining my technique.
Technique is a key that we're going to look at. Hopefully we're going to dispense some tips to people. But in terms of this discipline of casting, how did you find, or how did you sort of take a back seat from angling and decide to sort of go more into it? Was it because you had a real natural affinity to cast long distances?
Yeah, I had a tuition when I first started about 6 years ago, and since then long distance casting has always been on my mind, and so try and get better and better as I could at it. I got introduced to a few tournament fields in Suffolk, in Kent, and I headed down there where they actually have a measured out court. Right. And I've just been just hitting the leads out and just trying to improve myself. That's what it's been down for.
Has it always been pretty natural?
It has, yeah. For my first tuition, yeah, I was told I had a bit of a special talent, I guess, with my quick hands, and then since then it's just taken off.
Quick hands, but you're also built like some sort of Fijian rugby player.
Definitely
mate.
helps.
So like, I look like your son, do you know what I mean, on a park bench here. So I'm going to be interested to see how much impact technical sort of correction is going to impact my casting. For you, casting, distance casting in a fishing context, let's go back to fishing, is there loads of instances you can think of where it's benefited your angling?
Yeah, there's been plenty of times where I've seen one just further out than most people would fish, or I can't get round to that side of the lake because it's being fished. So being able to be in that peg and put one just a bit further out than a normal person would be has caught me a fish on multiple occasions.
Happy days. Right, mate, well, there's enough talking on this bench. Let's get to this field. Let's have a go. I'm interested to see you chuck as far as you're saying, and then, yeah, pass on some wisdom to me, mate, because I'm going to need it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Now, Jermaine, you've obviously seen me cast. I think the word you used was greatest ever caster you've seen on the field, wasn't it?
Something along the lines of that, yeah.
We'll put that in. But what I want to do is get your 3 sort of top tips that anybody can take away. First of all, like, I'm going to let you go for it, but I think you talked to me first of all about stance, didn't you? A starting point for everyone to start with.
So we've set up, usually rod behind you, try and get it as far back as you can. You want to set up with your weight on your back leg, rod right above your head, nice and straight, arms back. You don't want to be too over stretched.
Yeah.
Nice and relaxed stance, ready to put the power in.
So you've got your toe pointing forwards where you want to go as well,
That's
yeah?
right, yeah. You want everything travelling in the same direction you want to be casting.
Does it matter how you hold the reel?
For me, I have it in between my last finger and forefinger.
Okay.
That way I feel I've got more control over the reel and the rod as I'm putting in the power.
And I also noticed you were well specific about where because we're using a leader here, a braided leader to cast. You were well specific about where that leader knot was.
I always try to have my leader knot at the bottom of the spool and have the line going up above it. That way when I'm casting, there's no chance of the line coming up and catching the knot, causing a crack off.
And the drop?
About midway or just above is usually about right for most people.
Perfect. So that's setup nailed, mate, yeah?
Yep.
And that leads in pretty much to your second tip, doesn't it, mate? Which is around your choice of tackle and your confidence in it, mate. Talk to me about what you're using.
This is a 13-foot X350 rod and LR 10,000 reel. When you're casting, especially long distances, you want equipment that you can rely on and you're going to trust. With this setup, I know I can fish a long way and I'm not going to have any issues.
It don't seem like there's any off the throttle with regards to force. You're putting everything
I can into it.
And you've got no doubts in that letting you down at any point?
Not at all. 100% confidence in this equipment.
Which is a fundamental part in why you're getting so far in terms of distance. The 13 foot versus 12 foot, you said there's a 13 footer. Do you think the 13 footer is beneficial to most people casting further?
It is slightly, yes. It is by a few meters.
Why is that, mate?
It's just you get a longer drop, there's a bigger momentum, bigger arc in the lead, and which ultimately leads to the lead taking off at a higher speed.
Now, I referenced there, mate, about the power being on the throttle and hitting it. That leads into your last tip, doesn't it, mate?
Yep. So when you set up, you're all set into place, weight on your back foot, slightly leaning forward. So you want to step forward, get your weight transferred on the front. As you do that, you want to start bringing the rod down with your left hand, and then you want to punch with your right arm, pull with your left hand, finish the rod straight. When you get to this spot, you stop the reel.
I've seen, and again, I could be completely wrong, but a lot of casts whereby there's a bit of sort of bringing the rod round to sort of create a bit more force coming round. Does that help in terms of distance, or for you, is that a no-no?
That will generate a bit more speed, maybe a bit more distance, but you'll be compromising on accuracy.
Okay, so fishing-wise, I want to be accurate.
Fishing-wise, yeah.
So
You want everything set up, pointing forwards, casting and finishing where you want the lead to land.
Perfect, happy days. So straight line, all that weight transfer going in one direction, no round the side madness, no?
That's correct. No.
Happy?
Happy with that.
Mate, they are 3 top tips that anybody can put in. Obviously, there's a massive variance in casters. There is here, mate, definitely. But where you do tutorials and people can book them, there is a chance there for people if they want to delve further into it and get more benefit, as well as obviously practicing what we've talked about. They can come book a tutorial with yourself and get more sort of, how can you say, personal tips that will benefit them.
That's right. Yeah, not everybody casts the same, so it does help to have somebody overlook and just change a few things and get and go casting further.
Mate, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've learned an awful lot, mate, and it's no doubt benefited me. I'm going to hopefully take it into the pond the next time there's a distance fishing scenario. I'll have Jermaine buzzing in my head and be able to get those last few yards. So cheers, mate.
No worries.
mate. Same fucking much. Honestly. We're gonna need a bigger boat. This would be good life at Nash content.
Welcome to
Sometime later.
I can't believe it.
Well, as you can see by the conditions behind me, it dropped down a bit cold, but the saving grace was there was a big moon. You know what they say about big moon? It brings big carp. This ain't one of them, but he's pretty, and all 4 pound of him came from that little spot over a bit of bait. So, if anything, it's a fish. I've not blanked, which I did on the previous 2 shoots, and it is some confidence that that spot's working. So I'm going to slip him back, and hopefully next time I'm holding something at least 20 pound bigger.
I did have a couple of bites last night. Unfortunately, they were not the intended species. My one zig rig that I was fishing, 5 foot, the catfish seemed to take a very strong liking to this. It was very obvious after I hooked into the first one I think it was about 8 o'clock, half 8 last night. I could not stop it. Played it for about 20 minutes and eventually, yeah, the pads have obviously just done me just above the hook and it came off. No sooner though, 2 hours later, and I've hooked at either a different one or another catfish that just absolutely just bullied me. He's round the island. It must have taken another 60, 80 yards of line. I was already fishing quite far out and there was nothing I could do, and eventually the hook came out. I knew it was a cat, obviously for the way it was fighting and the fact that the whole zig was just covered in big old horrible catfish slime. So that was not what I needed. It took out the rods. I was redoing them twice and yeah, it put a little bit of a downer on things. Having said that though, I've woken up this morning and things are looking different. I've seen a lot of fish show this morning. They are localised in one zone at the minute, not in my water, not a million miles away. I must have seen at least 20 shows, which, considering it was absolutely freezing last night, and still was when I was seeing them show this morning, it's a good sign because I didn't see that yesterday. So we have rods as close to them as I can within my boundaries. Again, just single hook baits, one zig near there. And today, hopefully, things will be a little bit different and we can manage to nick one. So I'm staying optimistic.
Well, the plan for me today, having watched Alf get punished by cats and me having a bite first light off this spot, what I'm going to do, as we're coming into the middle part of the day, no zigs out at all for me. I don't want a catfish, I don't want any of that palaver, but I have had a bite off that spot. So I'm going to top up with 5, 6 dot spods worth of bait on that same spot, and I'm going to fish all 3 on pop-ups over it in the hope that there's been some activity there and I can capitalise on another bite. The only additional thing I'm going to do, we're coming into the middle of the day, there is a lot of bait boats coming through and dropping loads of bait, and obviously they're fishing on them. I'm going to pull my lines out of the water completely, rest the swim whilst there's bait out there for a couple of hours, and then drop back on it, because I think that little lack of pressure and lines in the water might just draw them onto that bait a little bit more. That's the theory anyway, but by avoiding the zigs, fishing pop-ups over the bait on that spot, I think in this swim, and there's no availability to move because it's very busy, I think that is my best chance. This ain't a cat, 100% Alf. I just put that bit of bait out, giving it a few hours just to rest, no lines in. I've put my first rod out on that bright pop-up, a yellow one. Believe it or not, before I've got the second rod wrapped up and ready to go, it's gone. Well, it's been a slow and steady fight. Sort of went off initially, and then it sort of just held its ground, plodding around. Barbless hooks and weed, I always feel a bit, fingers crossed I'm going to take it well easy and take my time, because in these conditions, especially during the day, maybe I've unlocked the code with rest in the swim, but I don't think there's going to be many chances until this sun really ebbs later. So I'm not going to rush things. Fingers crossed with a bit of luck, Alf can don his waders and do my netting duties. Go on, go on, go on. Swoop him. Yes?
Yeah, he's in the net.
Mate, what a battle. Was it wrapped round? I've got weed on the lead clips, wrapped round the dorsal, mate. I reckon that could go 30, mate. Get in, what a result that is.
What? Six on the nose, mate.
36? I'll take that, Alfie boy. Well, well, well. Big moon, big carp, a 36 pounder. I'm chuffed to bits. On a yellow pop-up, off it's gone, over the bit of bait, on that spot. Berners Hall, thank you very much. Look at the sheer chunky nature of it. 36 it's gone. Oh, I'm buzzing. Get in. I hope by now you've heard, seen, witnessed and benefited from the absolute edge that is the Bushwhacker baiting pole system. I'm here to talk to you about the Bushwhacker Baiting Pro and Pro XL versions. You'd have seen Ollie using them on Horton. In my angling, I've used them fishing tight to snags. I know he's used them fishing open water onto bubblers. There's a multitude of different uses for the baiting pole system, but essentially it's the stealth element all encompassed. You can drop rigs onto fish whereby the crash of a lead will spook them out. You can get bites very quickly. In a snag fishing context, you can actually put your lead really tight against structure. Obviously safety and safety bearing in paramount of mind, but really tight where you couldn't possibly get a cast. That's obviously beneficial in terms of fishing areas you might not be able to fish, but also making sure that you're well presented and in spots where fish are likely to feed. Now there are two versions, as I said before, the Pro and the Pro XL. Starting with the Pro, it's got 0.8 kilos of bait carrying capacity, whatever bait it is that you choose to put out there. Both the Pro and the Pro XL come with 10 1.5 metre sections as a standard kit and the head. Now obviously I'm going to talk through some accessories that you can have later that can really extend the usage and the length of that. But the comparison with the Pro head and the Pro XL is the Pro XL carrying capacity is greater. You've got 1.5 kilos worth of carrying load in there. Not only that, but the head itself is bigger. Now if you fish a water that is very open and you're using a baiting pole, the Pro XL head is definitely in those situations really good and stable as well. So if you have got a really open, expansive pit, that is definitely one to look at regardless of how much bait you're going to use, just purely for stability. Now in terms of accessories, as I hinted at before, there's a multitude of different accessories that really transform these baiting poles into an already ultra effective tool to something that is really teched up and something that you can take to whichever extent you want to in your angling. First of all, there's a clip feature which can house a multi-light, so whether you're shipping out tight to a snag at night, you've got that option covered. There's also a leading bridge. Now you may see a fish show in an area, you may see some sheeting up and bubbling, and you might, before you drop a rig on their blind, want to interrogate that area and see exactly why the fish are showing there or what. And that is why the Bushwhacker is an edge. That ain't been out there long. I've been doing a talking element, chuntering away about how mega it is. What is it they say? The proof's in the pudding. Where was I? Proof's in the pudding. There's one in the net. I just shipped that out. I'm going to try and pick up where I left off. I was talking about accessories. I believe I was talking about the leading bridge and how you can interrogate an area that you may have seen some fish activity in. So whether it's just to see what the fish are showing over or fizzing over, or whether it's to see exactly what substrate you're fishing on to then pick the correct rig choice, that leading bridge gives you that option. That comes with the kit as standard. And finally, there's a deeper head mount. What you can do with that is obviously screw on a deeper, so if you're shipping out there to different areas, you get a gauge of depth, also what the bottom contours are like, any substrates that may be there, and any fish that may be present as well. They are truly an all-encompassing system. They're unbelievable and will transform your angling. And with the fact that you can add on spare sections, 1.5 metre extensions at a time, you could take them pretty much to infinity and beyond. They're an absolute edge. If you haven't got one in your angling, get one now. Well, there you have it. Might not be the biggest, but stealthy approach, tight to an overhang with the bushwhacker, one in the net within 5 minutes. Can't argue, proof's in the pudding.
Oh my God. It's not a catfish, mate, but I've been on the match pond, mate.
Mate, I was on the match pond last night. The next one will be a surprise, isn't it? Boy.
Well, this one weren't a catfish. I said it could be a tench. There or thereabouts. Tiny little stocky on a zig. That's crazy. I mean, he's really cool. Nice scales on that, but we're going to get this one back. My luck has to improve. 3 catfish, and now this fella. Surely the next one's going to be a bigger carp. Beautiful one though, and he's no doubt going to be a 40-pounder one day. Well, that rod has gone again. The one that caught that exquisite 2-pound carp. That's obviously grown on in the lake. Sitting here now, I've just seen one show like long, well out of my water, and I was just on the phone to my mate Finn, talking about our future fishing escapades, and he was been a good luck charm because it's just ticked away.
Go on then, boy. This is becoming a bit of a regular occurrence,
I've
mate.
had a lot of activity, some of it unwanted. This bit's certainly not unwanted.
I'll be your gilly, sir, mate, as you're smashing it.
I would very much appreciate that. Oh, that was good timing.
What's he up, Paul? He's a lovely one, mate.
Well, they're going in the right direction. He's a little bit bigger than the one I had earlier. And what another beautiful carp. There's going to be some, I'd say there's going to be some real special ones in here. There's already amazing fish in here. And hopefully the next time I won't be able to be sat here in this position, holding it up as easy as I am this one. But I'm not complaining one bit. It's a beautiful evening. And I'm going to get a big one. I've got to manifest it. Cheers, mate. Off you go.
Well, mate. That's all she wrote, mate.
That's all she wrote. I've had a great time, nonetheless.
Mate, it's been eventful. I've been lucky, mate. I think from what was there, I've got very lucky with the size of fish, apart from maybe that first one. But you, mate, you've been unlucky, to be fair, but it's been active, hasn't it?
I don't get me wrong, I've had a great time, and the excitement, especially with you boys saying it's not a big catfish, you're not a big catfish, and I knew deep down, but on the inside I really was thinking, come on, let's just see, just in case you are that elusive 50-pounder. But no, we had clear-cut evidence over catfish with all the slime on the zigs in that. But yeah, you know what, it's the way it goes sometimes. You can't choose what one picks your bait up.
Exactly.
A couple of carp.
Exactly, mate.
Bigger, but it's been glorious in this spring sunshine. I'm looking forward to some more fishing. I don't know about you.
Too right, mate. Spring is here. Hopefully you've got loads of tips around pop-up fishing from this man. You can put them into your angling and catch yourself a few. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon with another episode of The Drop.